if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be to not take the world personally. The world just exists as chaos, including people who are blocking or gatekeeping you from doing the stuff you want to do. Yeah, don't try and feel like you're taking on the world. You're just you're part of the world. Like you are the world. It's not opposing you, and that could trickle into how you apply for jobs. If you apply to Riot, your portfolio is amazing. You come third place. Is that your fault? Well, you're going to be really bitter if you think it's your fault for trying and getting that close. When you feel defeated or crushed or a little lost, and you want to point at something else and blame it on it, it's just circumstance, you know?
Today, I'm uploading a call with my friend Jake Collins. Jake has worked as a designer, illustrator, concept artist, and painter. His work ranges from indie mobile to AAA console games and as a set designer for feature animation. I'm very lucky to say that the time we've spent sketching together in cafes or on rooftops has made me a much better artist. Jake's dedication to his work and to his creative expression has been an inspiration to me since the day we met. I think you'll find this call useful as he gives us insight into the mind and experiences of a designer in games, animation, and now the metaverse. I'm Connor Woodard, the 3D art guy, and I'd appreciate it a lot if you'd let me know what you think of this call in the comments below. And here's the call with Jake. It seems like your career is secondary to your artistic purpose. And you seem like you're very driven by being creative and by creating meaningful art, and that the career is a byproduct of that passion. I think that means that you do very well, like you've done very well with your career. But it's also really nice and really refreshing to see somebody that has so much industry experience that still makes for the sake of making. I have always respected that about you tremendously, as well as some of the things that you're really passionate about, like biodiversity and nature and the preservation of endangered species and our oceans. And this has been, it's been such a pleasure knowing you and being a fan of your work and having been witness to all the work that you've done. And I really appreciate you coming and talking to us today. I know I have a tremendous amount of questions. I'm going to just run through this bio here just to give a little bit of context for our students, and their questions will get the priority. So if you guys have any questions for Jake about your projects or about, the industry or anything, then this is just an open floor Q&A. And if you don't have any questions, then I will fill the void with the many of mine. Jake works as a designer with experience split equally between games and animation. He's worked primarily as a set designer in a handful of animated feature films and a concept generalist in games ranging from indie mobile to AAA console. He paints in most mediums. He paints super well in most mediums, and prototypes his own games or illustrated books, nerds out over nature and biodiversity, and has interest in cultural commentary, illustration, and films as expression of the human experience. On top of that, how many years have you been in the industry?
Yeah, I started in doing 3D modeling and surfacing in like 2007. So I guess I'm over 12 years. Yeah. But yeah,
2007, that'll make it 15.
I'm not good at math. And there was one year, early-ish in career after the first studio where I had a year of like a dry spell, and so I kind of mentally always subtract a year and a bit because that kind of stuff happens.
Totally.
Yeah, there was like a sudden void of game companies in Vancouver where the taxes weren't here, and yeah, there was a turbulent year. But yeah.
Over the course of those 15 years, how many of those years would you say were stable versus how many were turbulent?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm like a designer mostly, so usually it's 6 months, 9 months, or a year. It's pretty uncommon to get like a full-time forever job as a designer because you're at the front of the production and there's usually a couple months off time. So I'm used to, you kind of have to hustle and you have to network if you're going to have something that's gig based and not like a full-time commitment from companies. But that I think that suits me because I'm frugal with my money, and I wanna carve out time to do the expressive art like you mentioned. So it suited me as a whole. Yeah.
Same. I reflect that exactly the same. Like I never wanted. I'm like 6 month contract. I'm gonna give you 6 months of my time. I don't know. That's a long time. Like I always felt like shorter contracts was better for me. For that same reason, you can hop around, you can make moves, you can make decisions, you can change things up, and there's a lot of advantage to that in exchange for less stability. Have you ever had a full-time position anywhere?
Like, well, they have like what they call full-time contract where you, yeah, it's the same deal that you could still be let go if project falls.
Right.
But no, I think my current job is offered me recently, but they're a new startup in like the metaverse. Tons of funding, lots of celebrity people. It's like music, entertainment, and games together, and they're probably going to ask me to stay full time. So I'm still
Fantastic.
thinking about it.
And that
Yeah.
experience in general, has that been like, and yeah, I have heard of a lot of like full-time contracts go out because this is the start of a new industry. And so people need people to be reliable and consistent, and it's not as matured and developed as say animation or games are, where they can just swap out with the next one, in 6 months if you decide to leave or whatever. But yeah, I have noticed that is definitely a trend, is that metaverse companies, my own as well, is like we're looking to invest in people that we can rely on for the next few years, at least, hopefully decade, because this is the start of something that's going to last for a long time.
And people like you and me don't want to commit forever, and you want to have I guess breadth of artistic experience is like something that is important to me. Maybe everyone here as well. Like you'll be like a richer person for having tried on many hats rather than the same one and mastering it. Yeah, I did some online teaching for a couple of years and like building the program, and a lot of it was training people to be more of a generalist. Because yeah, if you get in on a small team and you get trusted to do a bit of drawing, a bit of modeling, yeah, like that's always the best way to get rolling if you can. Smaller companies or places where you grow and you're not in like a very narrow channel. That's always probably on the artistic side. The thing my ears always perk up to is when somebody says, "Hey, we need you for more than one thing." You're like, "Oh, I can yeah, share art too at any point. I have like hundreds of stowed away images in a folder.
Awesome.
Like, yeah, whatever you guys are into hearing about. I find I drift into like talking about philosophy, like how to deal with an ego as a creator, and like I can go that route, or just what does it look like to do set design, creativity. You had some questions on broad creativity, Connor.
How did you start?
Yeah, this is going to age me, but my art institute school I went to, they actually made you make like DVDs because it's more annoying to like physically hand DVDs to people that you want a job from. It's more of a big deal then to like for people to watch them. So they actually ended up finding a 3D casino company I didn't even know of in town. Yeah, got a little bit lucky from my school, promoting their students. Yeah, so that would be like the first job. The day I got the call for that job, someone was trying to rope me into their studio to work for free, and so I got walked to a desk, and I looked around, and there was like interns everywhere, and then I got the phone call that like, oh, we want to interview you for this 3D generalist job on the same day that I was almost going to get attempted bullied by some studio. So cautionary tale, should never have to work for free or earn your seat based on your work. They should just know.
Fair enough.
What was on that DVD?
I did a character design reel. So I had 3 characters, like low poly to high poly with turntables. There was a horror one, like a spider man mutant. There was a British soldier, like from way back.
Mm.
And then a fantasy Arabian style character, like an Assassin's Creed kind of character. And they were pretty bad, but good enough.
Yeah, the first round is always terrible.
Yeah, so I can just take a quick tour through here. Yeah, I did some illustration outside the industry for wildlife conservation. So these are images that were headers on YouTube videos about all the subjects behind the Ocean Prevention Society's film. So these are more like narrative illustrations. This is stuff from Bardell where I met Connor actually. So this would be an example of prop design. Uh, taken from the script or the storyboards, that we need some kind of magic ring that the Mer people are going to present to each other, and some kind of altar to host the wedding on as a bit of a gag. So this would be an example of like a designer's exploration.
That's awesome.
Similar, there's a shoe shining stand for Puss to, I guess, I don't know, he had a side hustle, I can't remember. So these are all design, just playing with variations and seeing how you can combine elements together. Turnarounds, I guess, getting it into the 3D production. Overly detailed show, in my opinion, for the step. It takes all the creativity away from people modeling to I think I did model these actually just to make the turnaround. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And these are examples of like the surfacing pass would be at this studio was treated separately. So you would figure out the geometry in the concept, then you would do the breakdown, which was like this. And third thing you would do is figure out the materials. And sometimes it's just playing with color variations on the wood, or how the map is a cube was their joke here. Yeah, so this took an eye for realism of looking at objects and trying to render it without a lot of strong lighting.
Yeah, as a surfacing artist, this is so fleshed out and so well lit in a neutral way, but plenty of details to feed the texturing shading of it.
Right. Yeah, that's an example of being like super thorough. I also worked on the movie that was related to the Ratchet and Clank game. I think it was a PS4 launched game. So this involved a bit of 3D. I don't think this got used in the end. So this was getting into cockpit designs and interiors. Still pretty technical, but not. You'll see it's not like the Bardell studio, for example. This was a lot more getting away with like 3/4 designs and working with modelers to make it more creative in how the departments worked.
And you preferred that?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Making cartoons and shows is mostly fun because of the people, right? Because by the time it comes out, I found I was not nearly as excited as the meetings where everyone's work came together and made you feel good because of the people. So if I had an opportunity to go and work with a modeler and they have a conversation and they say, "Hey, Jake, the bottom of your chair looks really weird. I don't think it works," then you can work it out in a personable way.
Totally.
Yeah, sometimes you have really crazy animation states where you have to do 3D mock-ups just to figure out how this stuff could like transform between all the modes they need in the script.
Wow.
So this was a dorky leader's Segway that you stand on the little platform and float around, but then he had all these hidden weapons in it that spawned later.
That's a cool space. That's so cool.
It should look evil. If it doesn't,
it does.
Okay.
It does. Yes. Yeah. No, it looks badass.
I was trying to get the piping to feel kind of like stitches, like they've just to like have this really like passive impression of something Frankenstein or unpleasant, but it's still very cold and rigid. That was the idea. And these are some of like just design features you would do as a breakdown in the walkways.
Wow.
And then a concept piece of where it's like a factory headquarters where it would exist. It's not incredibly polished, but I mean, by the time it gets in the film, you have matte painters and really great folks.
That is stunning, though. That is really beautiful work. This is all before it gets to modeling, right?
I think I've been an avid modeler on this one, so I actually modeled all of this to mock it up,
and then painted after.
Yeah, that was really a great experience because the director can see real cameras in the scene. He or she can tell you if the scale is good or where the action's going to happen, and you can map it out early.
And
And
does this type of environmental work like contribute to what, wow, yeah, exactly. Like it contribute to what you're doing now at a metaverse studio?
it would. I'm more of a managerial role right now, but the team that I'm working with for concepts, they do a lot of 3D as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
Um,
if you were a student and you wanted to get into the metaverse and you wanted to start that type of career, is this the type of design and concepts that we should start targeting for models and environments? Is that what you would recommend, or is there some another strategy that you would take
to get into where? Sorry.
to get into a metaverse company or
Oh.
to
Yeah, I'm not sure what's specific about that other than I guess an interest in that kind of technology.
right?
It's not like guaranteed that you need to have it. Like companies exploring NFTs and trying to like push the idea of a smart contract to a whole new creative level,
Right,
not just selling JPEGs and stuff.
right.
And it would help me if I was more invested in those myself, as an example. I would be able to like whisper in some influential input into the company, but I can still thrive as, you know, my main role of being an artist. So if you want to work into those companies, yeah, I think you just owe it to yourself to look at what the goals are of their particular space. Like the one I'm working on is with music. It's like the music industry plus video gaming. So the idea of live concerts or exploring like a virtual Radiohead world with an avatar that you design.
Right,
You better know about music, I guess, a
right.
little bit.
For that company,
Yeah.
you'd have to be well versed. Yeah,
And they're not going to ask you, hey, do you make music? Like, do you understand theory? No, but like the more you're interested in that niche, the more you'll appeal for sure. Yeah, it's just more props, some stuff that was modeled. Uh, Airlock, there's always an airlock in a sci-fi.
yep. And your perspective is so nice, and your line weight is so nice. The
I just
perspective has got to
cheated.
geo, right? Yeah,
Oh, I cheated. Yeah. You make a selection, then you stroke the path, and then you duplicate it, and you got all these nice ellipses and perspective. But yeah.
what informs, because I know all the tools you're using. I know
Hmm.
how to use all the same tools that you know how to use, and I have no idea how to make any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I can curve, stroke, select, and all that stuff. But what is informing the deeper creative part of this? Like where does this come from?
Hmm. Yeah, if it's something like the like Puss in Boots, the with like, you know, the shoe shining chairs and all that, and it's already so specific, yeah, I would go straight to the reference. If it's anything that is from the ground up creative, I tend to thumbnail from imagination first. And I find that lets me just focus on what is the creativity, because you're trying to find like 1 + 1 = 3 for some reason, you know, like you're trying to do something that's kind of new. So I find if I pick the two main ideas and I thumbnail without looking at too much, you kind of get like the meat of the concept earlier without being gravitated towards something that looks shiny on the internet you already found. So, for example, I pulled up some of these.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that question because long, just a few years ago, one of my mentors explained that you'll get better at 3D modeling, just creating environments and stuff if you know how to draw. And my question, like, how good can you become if you're also good in drawing?
Hmm. I think yeah, I don't like a lot of my own drawings, so that's normal. Like it doesn't really go away. Like some drawings you will look back and you won't feel like you made it, and all the rest are garbage. I think when other people look at your sketch, if they see your idea in, that's what they're really looking for. I mean, you might get distracted by like nice hatching and nice line weight, but if your sketch has a great idea in it, you know, you win. Like that's the point of it. And if it gets your head wrapped around a cool concept and allows you to then model it, you won, right? Being good as a draftsman is its own thing. I don't even know if that's in the realm of thumbnailing and sketching, because those two activities are about playing with an idea, trying to materialize it so that you understand it and you can show it to someone. And if the idea is good, they're gonna think it's a great sketch. There's really famous people, like famous costume designers, and their work doesn't look that good. In like sometimes you find those people, but their ideas are so good and they're still famous. People still love them, you know? But on a 3D side, yeah, it's just you're probably a very fast modeler, but sometimes there's a shortcut there in just drawing like tiny. Yeah, and I guess if you're anxious about it, I would just start showing more people, to be honest. Like you can either give yourself a really bad pen to draw with. I do that all the time. I actually have a folder of really bad pen drawings I could go dig up. But if you draw with a bad pen, all you're left with is looking for ideas. There's no more like tidy line drawing to show somebody. Everyone's precious with their drawing. It's not about the drawing itself on paper, really. It's really about your getting it in your mind so that you can express it to someone, and then the drawing can go away. And it's a tendency that almost everyone has. You drew a bad eye on a portrait, you want to tear it out of your sketchbook, or you want to start over, you want to erase the whole thing. Everyone is a bit like that. But if you pick a tool that makes you personally less tedious, and you just go through the motions of repetition of ideas, you can chip away at that feeling, I think.
I totally agree.
It's hard though. It always comes back. If I haven't drawn in a week and I go and try to relax and draw something and it doesn't go well at the beginning, I'm annoyed. You know, it's all about managing your own expectations about what your goal is. If I'm trying to sit down and relax and design something for fun, where's all that stress coming from? Like it shouldn't be there, right? But that's personal. Everyone has their own art critic inside that needs counseling or something beyond me.
I just think what you said is there's artwork that you look back on that you think, I didn't even do that. I don't even remember doing that because it's good. It's so good. I can't even identify as being the person that made it. And then everything else is garbage. Well, that's what I'm reading from it, you know? But I mean, isn't that kind of what it is like, I think artists in general, many artists identify as someone that's trying to be good at art or trying to be better at art. So no matter how good you are, you always feel like you're not good enough.
As long as your journey includes biting off something new and exploring, it should always be hard, right?
That's right. Yeah. It should always feel hard. You should always feel like you suck at it a little bit.
Or you're no longer being creative, I would say, right? Like if you told me to like redesign this coffee cup, I would be achieving nothing creatively because I already know what it looks like. And you tell me to go design a coffee cup that's 3 feet high for some reason, and I'm like, I'll find a way, but that sounds ridiculous, and it's going to be hard.
It's going to be hard, right?
And you're gonna look really dumb using it, but maybe I'll find a way, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
That would be the goal, because it sounds crazy, but sometimes you get really weird curveballs, and that's what will make you humbled and have to try harder, because you just won't know.
Totally.
And that, yeah, I just naturally want to do that because I get bored easily of the like executing on what I've done before, I guess. Some people like that. It's calming. Like they'll iterate on the same character that they're attached to, or they love airplanes and they'll draw airplanes forever. But outside of biology, like this kind of weird stuff, I'm a little less like that, and I always want to try something that's challenging.
Well, biology also has that diversity baked into it. You're allowed to explore so far within the realm of biology. That's broader than airplanes.
Probably until you get into the engines and like, yeah.
Cool
new, yeah. But yeah. Yeah, and these ones, like the creative part here was like, you know how like spores or seeds, when you look at them for real plants, they don't actually resemble the plant they grow into. So that was a bit of my jumping off point for these, was to make more of a whimsical but still educational kind of experience of biology. So something inspired by, you know, the microorganisms we don't see, that they're too tiny, something that would compel people to want to investigate it, because this stuff does look crazy under microscopes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take the shape language of a fictional seed and grow that into a whole bunch of species. And that was my creative challenge, was how to I guess make it fun and a bit sciencey, but also quite alien, I guess, without being like all the alien plants I see in like a lot of science fiction games. They all have glowing mushrooms and stuff.
Right. Staying away from the tropes.
Trying to, but then again, you end up drawing cabbage and like lots of like really strange assemblies. But
I'm noticing across all of these pieces that, I mean, I'd love to talk about color harmony, but even beneath that, I'm just finding that there's such a flow. It's like the dance of the eye movement across the art pieces. It's like a waltz through every one of these pieces. And I'm wondering how you use visual storytelling, how you think about visual storytelling in order to guide the eye through a piece like this.
Oh yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a lot about like when you learn stylized art, it applies to compositions as well, about broken or implied lines.
Yeah, because I think that's going to be relevant to everyone in this room as we plan our cameras and plan our demo reels, our compositions for our 3D artwork. I'm just noticing that this is something that you seem to have absolutely mastered. I'm wondering if you could help break that down.
I don't want to call you a liar, but you're such a nice guy.
Dude, your work stuns me. It really does. Domingo, did you have a question, or is that from before?
Oh no, that was from before.
Yeah, I think the flow, I guess, is just like a series of arrows from one thing to another. So there's a flow within one object, but then there's a flow in the whole, and that was part of the challenge. So like an implied line would be the invisible line in between here that you don't see, like joining these two elements, or this line pointing to this one, almost like they join together, and this line going up to join that line. And generally this whole thing could flow kind of like that, but it's all implied. And I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about, maybe.
Of course, yes. Yeah, absolutely. It seems they connect amongst themselves, but they also connect across the entire piece, giving it like a sort of large scale logic that is harmonious at every level of detail. And how do we do that?
Can you write that description down? Because I
We're recording.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you noticed, because that's one of the hardest parts of this. Is I think the challenge is to make like at least 7 species. There's usually one or two that are like babies and then grown up next to it, and then to make all 7 different while you're restricted to this idea, and then put them all together so that you don't stare at any one of them for too long. If anything, this is a culmination of like nerding out on design, but also having fun and drawing at the same time. And it's a lot of the warp tool. It's a lot of digital tricks to get it all to flow nicely.
Yeah, that movement.
Yeah,
makes it such an active piece. As our eye moves from one thing to the next, it's exactly as you said. We don't spend too long on any one thing. Do you have to restrain yourself from making things too interesting in order to create an eye traffic jam?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think in the rough stages of this, there'll be plants that are just straight up have to delete, because it's just not fitting. No matter where I put it in the cluster on its own layer, it doesn't fit anywhere. You just have to delete it. Yeah, quick principles, I guess, with playing with angles. I don't know how useful this is, but usually anytime you have a really strong force one way, you need to balance it with another. And you'll see that all over the place. Like if all these plants are straight up and down, it's pretty boring. So what I would do is decide, okay, I'm gonna grow this one at an angle, but then you need enough counterbalance force so it doesn't feel like it's just gonna lean off the composition. So that's a general rule you could probably see.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the overall silhouette, like you mentioned, is really annoying. So this little curve here would be intentional, so that it connects up to here. And these have a bit of a flow, but it's this big arc over the top. It doesn't have to be like a perfect simplified shape, but that's what does it, I think. Like it could be better if this one was, thrown a little more like that.
Is there too perfect? Can these things line up too well? Is part of the visual appeal a little bit of traffic or a little bit of breakup on that? Or do you think the more that you line up with a simple overall shape, the more appealing it is?
It will generally have more appeal if it lines up, but you can depart from it having a handcrafted or detailed appeal if it's too clean, because then you start to get into hyper cartoon looks where it's extremely simple and perfect and it's not trying to be hand drawn. So I usually get it, you know, in the ballpark, and then I let it be a little imperfect, but that's a big part of the fight. Like even seeing this one as a circle, as like in perspective, a few circles, and it just happens to be in perspective, but it's the same idea as this one. But I would intentionally leave these gaps so that it's not perfect. And there's a little one poking out here, and so that in that way it's okay.
So a little bit of noise to it just to break it up a little bit.
But maybe it's more appealing if
if you didn't
further. Yeah, and then so if you're doing some drawing to figure out how to make it interesting, I generally just have like a rule of threes. Like if you give yourself more than 3 key components in your drawing or your main idea, it's too many generally. So in this case, like I would have like 3 shapes to work with. I have like some kind of root thing, and then I've got vegetation on top. And then the third part I would say is like the triangular patterning. And basically I'm just repeating those 3 things in different configurations up here. Like maybe this body swells like a cactus and it has the same bulby shape, but now it's just divided differently. So you have to, like, in my case, add to it enough. But generally you're just playing with those 3 things over and over and over, right?
So again, to translate this to visual storytelling or composition, you think that any composition that has more than 3 ideas in it is probably just over communicating, this is crowded?
Well, generally, yeah, because if you want to have an image that like hits you, it has to be simple enough. If you want it to be confusing, that's intentionally by design. But yeah, if you have like more than 3 things fighting for your attention, it's really going to be confusing. It'll be that movie still that you couldn't quite tell where you were supposed to look, or that castle that's like just way too complicated and I don't know what it's about.
Right.
You need to know, like in a hurry, if it's appealing right away, it's probably because you emphasize 3 things rather than continually adding and adding and adding.
That's fantastic. These are like the counterpositioning principle and keeping it to 3 things, and overall the keeping the larger shape a very simple, minimal shape that all of the smaller shapes fit into. Are there any other creative principles that you have that you feel apply to traditional, digital, and even now virtual experiences and work of that type?
Like design principles, like aesthetic things, or
just tools in your toolkit that you feel like, if I'm going to paint something, draw something, make something digitally, or help guide my team to create virtual experiences, the one thing I always find is useful to hang on to is what? That might be too crazy of a question.
It's a bit crazy, but I'm trying. I'm game. Yeah, I guess like always. I guess keeping your eye on what's the point of the thing you're making, no matter what it is. That's always valuable. It's like that's why when you look at something you made yesterday, your first impression will be refreshed and you'll have a different feeling. It's the same thing when you've been working on the same for 2 days straight. You've been modeling the same scene. You can kind of forget what your original goal was for it. So yeah, just trying to keep that in your mind is always going to help no matter what you're making, I think. Like if you suddenly get way too realistic, way too detailed, you clutter your composition, you just always need to remember, like, why am I making this particular thing? And the more I've listened to that, the more I've been able to, I guess, exaggerate what I like about it. And that's where the expression comes from.
What's your opinion about Procreate?
Doesn't really matter, I guess, as long as you just pick one to be proficient at.
Fair
Um,
enough.
yeah, it's mostly people get attached to their hotkeys and they have all various reasons why they pick a software. But
Oh yeah. I was just curious to know, like, I don't know. It just kind of popped up a questions like, have you ever used it, or do you like using it sometimes?
I haven't had my hands on it a lot, but I have like lots of Illustrator friends who love it, and they swear by it because it was designed for painters from the ground up, whereas
Fair
Photoshop
enough.
was designed for photography editing and became painting. So I've heard great things. I also use a program called Art Rage, and I use a program to get myself away from all my digital tricks of lasso tool and gradients and blend modes. So I go to a program like Art Rage to just basically smear around with paint and but you know when you're reaching for that software for a reason, right? If I need to do technical design, it's absolutely going to be Photoshop. If I'm trying to do a photo study, hey, maybe I'll grab that software that's a little looser and I don't have all my tricks.
The last thing I'd like to ask you, Jake, is if you could give yourself one piece of advice, your younger self, what would it be?
Classic. In the future, you'll meet Connor and tell him he's a great host. I would I would have that hooked up ahead of time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do you think personally or like professionally? What's
Let's
your
do both.
darn it? Hey, sorry,
Okay,
guys.
you can
Gotta
do
go.
one. You can do one if you want. You can do
Um,
professionally if you prefer, but I think personally it's gonna be very valuable.
yeah, I think it would be to not take the world personally. That would be like my overarching philosophy that would help everything from like art to happiness. Like the world just exists as chaos and don't take it personally, including people who are blocking or gatekeeping you from doing the stuff you want to do. Yeah, that would be my ultimate biggest thing. I would have known earlier. I would have spent less time being sad. I would have not held so many grudges. I would have been more creatively expressive.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's a big shift. I've been reading a lot of Buddhist material, and I think if you find a way to just more content, more peaceful as you go through life, it helps your studies. It helps everything. Yeah, don't try and feel like you're taking on the world. You're just you're part of the world. Like you are the world. It's not opposing you, and that could trickle into how you apply for jobs. You know, if you apply to Riot, your portfolio is amazing, you come third place, is that your fault? Well, you're going to be really bitter if you think it's your fault for trying and getting that close. I just find that mentality to would have been helpful going back when you feel defeated or crushed or a little lost and you want to point at something else and blame it on it. It's just circumstance, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like the universe is a lot more indifferent. It's not out to get you. You know, it's just
Yeah,
chaos.
it is chaos. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and thank you so much for all of your time today. Really, really, really appreciate it, and for going an extra 20 minutes. I owe you one a tall beer or something. But
Sure.
thanks, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, great. Yeah, don't know how it lands with everyone because everyone has their own journey with struggles that you can't even express to other human beings because it's just so complicated. But your brain is just a pattern machine, and it's always going to pick the thing it survived from before, and that results in you're wrong, I'm right. I've seen this before. Like all your brain's trying to do is just keep you alive. So yeah, do what you can to stay motivated and get new inputs all the time.
Change is a good thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here.